We've seen college football coaches move on to the NFL in previous years, of course, and the success has varied all over the place. Urban Meyer to the Jacksonville Jaguars. We will look at it next with you here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. So welcome on in. We are at, just only day 3 of the offseason. Day 3 of the offseason. Please check out the videos that we have posted in recent days looking at the likes of North Carolina, Michigan, Arkansas, and other teams, Florida included last night. Of course, the aftermath of the national championship game with Alabama dominating Ohio State for the most part, 52-24. See the countdown clock behind me. We're going to have to rev that baby up and get it set for the offseason. We don't know exactly when kickoff of game 1 in week 0 is going to be, but we could give it a bit of an estimation and go with that. Appreciate everybody being in the live chat. We will take your calls at 860-325-3687. Again, it is Urban Meyer to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That is one of the highlights of the college football / NFL discussion today. Also, I wanted to get your requests on off-season topics that we will tackle here. I can certainly read you off a long list of various topics and subjects that we're going to post here in the next several weeks and several months during the off-season, but would like to get your requests as well. So welcome in. The phone lines are open, 860-325-3687, but pay attention to that crawl down at the bottom of the screen. First and foremost, smash the like button. Would like to get to, I don't know, as many likes as many people as have filtered in here over the next couple hours as we take your calls. Please like, share the videos on social media. I heard a YouTuber the other day, a college football YouTuber. I don't even know who it was, but they said something that I've been saying for the last few years, is that for you to share the videos on social media is probably the best contribution you can make. So please share the videos on social media. People on Twitter, people on Facebook that follow you, that are in connection with you, don't know that we're here. So please let them know that we're here talking college football with you every day, bringing on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the nation to help the analysis and discussion. We talk Florida State football at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So even though Florida State's down, check out that lively hour with Jason Parker, Logan Robinson, and Big Game James Coleman. And at the conclusion of that conversation, we tackled the question that we talked about last night and can, of course, continue today, which would be
the call will start
coming off of Alabama's perfect season, the best national championship teams of the century, and how do they rank? MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Well, I just had to get your thoughts on the breaking news today. I just tuned in. Overall, Mark Rogers' thoughts on the new Jacksonville Jaguars head coach, Urban Meyer.
Urban Meyer loves a challenge, and he's got one on his hands, certainly right there. He also knows that he goes into that, of course, with the selection of the most important position of his choice, and you would think that that would be Trevor Lawrence. So as long as he, I'm sure, knowing what he wants out of a football operation, he must have been told all the right things in regards to the power that he will wield and how the resources are going to be utilized to make that a winner down there. So he obviously liked what he heard about how they're going to set him up. It will be interesting because of the obvious. He's only coached in college. He's never coached at that level. How that transition is going to be for him. I would think that he would be one of the very few, we talked about this a few weeks ago, one of the very few college coaches that would gain basically instant credibility going into an NFL locker room.
I would say this, Mark. Just first of all, from an Ohio State fan perspective, I do have to ask the question: is that cyst that he had, the health condition, is he going to? Is anybody going to ask him about that? I mean, isn't that the obvious question? Your health was a concern going forward as a college football coach 2 years ago, but that's not a concern going forward as an NFL coach right now? Is that what we're supposed to believe?
Yeah, I think the two most obvious questions would be the one that you just raised and the one I raised. At his introductory news conference, you would think that somebody would say, okay, this is what you stated a few years ago. Now, he never shut the door completely,
right,
but to be asked, what has changed? What is your health condition? Has something changed, hopefully for the better? And why are you prepared to take on this kind of job in 2020 and not 2 years ago? And then the second one was the one that I brought up, the differences in the levels of coaching and how he will adjust and tackle that.
Well, here's the thing, Mark. I mean, he had said that he had basically a cyst.
Mm-hmm.
It was and it was causing him, all those, headache problems and, collapsing on the sideline and all of that. And he was told by doctors that this would be a reason he couldn't coach any longer. I talked about this with Pigskin Pete, and Pigskin Pete says, well, that's the same line he left, when he left Florida, was health conditions. He had the heart issues. And that was the reason that he, gave for stepping down as the coach of Florida. That still kind of is something that I'm going to be real interesting to see how he addresses that. As far as what you're saying, adjusting to the pros, just a few comments. Number one, as a college coach, compared to a pro coach, like in college, you are everything. I mean, to a great degree. You're basically the owner of the team, you're the general manager of the team, and you're the coach of the team. So you've got a lot more. It's really your show. Now, in the NFL, you have an owner, you have a general manager. There's those steps to levels to a franchise. And I'm just wondering from that perspective how he deals with all of that. Because sometimes, we've seen situations in the past in the NFL where the coach and the general manager don't always see eye to eye. I think that was a big part of Mr. Harbaugh leaving San Francisco, is he had some disagreements with their general manager out there. So, I think that, he's certainly a successful coach. I will say, other than recruiting, the one thing that this man does really, really well, Mark, and we've seen it at both Florida and Ohio State, is put together pretty good coaching staffs. And I think that's something that could benefit him really well in the NFL. I don't know what your thoughts are on all of that.
Yeah, it's a good thought. So I would think that so we've seen NFL head coaches take on the personnel side as well, and it usually is too much for them to take on. We've seen certain NFL head coaches who want to take on one side of the football, usually the offense, and then we've seen other ones who, most famously Bill Parcells, who made the comment, if they want me to cook the meal, then I should have say in the grocery list or however it was phrased. But I got to think that Urban Meyer would want to have say in key personnel decisions and just overall approach and planning. I got to think that he did not accept this job without some input into personnel decisions.
Yeah, I think the thing about it being is, and I think a head coach to a great extent because he knows his roster, because he's the one that has to coach it on the field. So he knows what the strengths and weakness of his roster is. So, and I think that that's the one thing is you've seen that in the past coaches and general managers have clashed, and that's made for bad situations. I remember years ago, Marty Schottenheimer with the Chargers had a 14-2 season and got fired after a playoff loss, partly because he didn't get along with his general manager very well. So, I'm going to be interested to see that. I do think, obviously, he was probably attracted to money. Is always going to be the big thing. He's going to get Trevor Lawrence as his quarterback, which is arguably the best pro prospect for a quarterback to come out since people are saying since Peyton Manning or John Elway or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that, and the NFL is a quarterback-driven league, Mark. Much like college is, too. Tell me who your quarterback is, and I'll tell you if you have a chance to win. So, I think that was also probably part of the excitement. And, there's some talent on that roster. I mean, I follow the NFL fairly closely. So, but yeah, I mean, I just going to be really interesting to see. I guess also the other question I have is from an Ohio State perspective. The concern here is, does he come and start to take some of the Ohio State coaches? A lot of that staff that he helped build for Ryan Day. I don't know what your thoughts are
I don't
on
know.
that.
I would think that he would that they would be some of the first people that he would think about, not necessarily take, but they would be at the forefront. Certainly, the people that he's worked with in the past, he knows who impressed him and who did not. So the coaches always gravitate to the guys that they know, of course. First and foremost, and then just to kind of clarify one of the health points that you made is that actually, as you well know, he made those comments about the Florida situation at 2 different times. So they played in a 2009 season in which he had health issues after the SEC championship game, played in that bowl game.
Yeah.
And then he still came back for a 2010 season. And you may have a better recollection of this than I do. Didn't he step away and then he still came back?
Right, he was going to step away at the end of after that Sugar Bowl game, I believe, at the end of the 2009 season.
Yes.
They beat the Cincinnati. It was Tebow's last game.
Yeah.
And then he came back for that last year. And then, actually they kind of had a bad year in 2010. They weren't as good in the post-Tebow era. But, then it was just like, then he left. And there was a lot of complaints from the Florida people as far as where he left that program and, of course, how he left that program. Because they said that he didn't leave it in very good shape. He certainly didn't leave it in as good a shape as he left Ryan Day, obviously. So, I think that that's the thing with Urban, too, is you wonder how the ownership at Jacksonville feels about a college coach that only stays in certain places for very, short periods of time. When we got him, Mark, I was optimistic that he would stay here at least 10 years. I mean, that's how long we had Jim Tressel, although, Ohio State only lost Jim Tressel because of certain circumstances. But I was not necessarily optimistic that would be the case. I thought 10 years might have been a stretch. And we had him for 7 years. So, it was a fairly young guy. So, and I still wonder how much of the Zach Smith situation also played into his decision to leave Ohio State. Now, a lot of that was talked about at the time, too.
Oh, I do, too. I don't know whether Urban, while he publicly remains loyal to Ohio State, and I'm not saying that in an adverse way, that he's not privately, but you know what I mean, that he covered up and kept quiet on some ill will that was created because of the handling of that situation and did not believe that he should have been suspended for 3 games. And that was one of the big reasons why that decision was drawn out so long, apparently, reportedly, that he fought and fought and fought and fought. And that news conference was supposed to announce that decision sometime midday that day, and it wasn't until late night that they finally made the decision known. And it's pretty widespreadly wide known that he didn't agree with the decision, and I don't know if that created some ill will there, and he decided then and there that he was not going to continue past. Probably thought he was too invested, of course, at that point in 2018, and that he would just close out the season and then move on from there.
Yeah, when he left, Mark, I was more tilted to the way that he might just stay away from coaching. Although I was buying into the fact that the health situation was really serious. And, I always did notice that season, him having those problems on the sideline that I mentioned earlier. And I thought he was happy with the Fox job. He seemed like he was happy with it. And I thought he was really going to stay retired. I was leaning towards there was a higher percentage that he was going to stay retired. And the other thing that I would also add, Mark, is I think if he was going to come back, I always thought it was for a college job. I didn't think it was going to be for an NFL job. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Did you think if he would come back, it would be definitely for a college job compared to a pro job, or did you have a feeling on that one way or another?
Well, I think for most of us, it's just easier to see any longstanding college or NFL coach staying at that level. And so it's difficult to imagine him on the sidelines during an NFL game. So I am not shocked by it, but had I been given the guess, I'd have been fairly confident. If somebody would have said to me a year ago, Urban Meyer's coming back to coaching, which is he going to coach, the NFL or college football, I would have been about 75 or 80% sure that it was going to be in college. And of course, he had his every opening that came about. Of course, he was the first name mentioned and could have coached anywhere he would have liked. So apparently, he didn't want to be the coach at the University of Texas. And I would think had USC known that he had extreme interest, I know that he had interest, I believe, but not extreme interest. If they would have been confident that he would have taken that job, I would think that Clay Helton would have been out the door. So for whatever reason, different people respond to different circumstances or opportunities and see their legacy a different way. And I don't know, I got to think he cares about his legacy. I would think that it could be better and more securely built at the college level if he continued there rather than going the, you could say, Jimmy Johnson route. So he has that opportunity now to win championships at both levels.
Yeah, it's interesting, Mark. I was one of those who just always saw him as a college coach. The Bobby Bowdens, the Joe Paternos, the people that are just college coaches, and just stay college coaches. Now, both of those guys obviously were at the same place for forever. But, you know what I mean? Just from the standpoint that I just saw him as a college coach. Now, it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. I know Pigskin Pete had mentioned, what happened to Pete Carroll. And I had mentioned to him that, Pete Carroll was a little bit of apples to oranges because, remember, Pete Carroll, before he was at USC, had the experience of coaching the Patriots. He was the guy that followed Parcells after that statement that he made as the Patriots coach. And then, what's Pete Carroll's luck? He was a coach in New England in between Parcells and Belichick. And then, but, he had already had that pro experience before, that he already stepped back into the NFL. Spurrier, was a guy that tried the NFL, wasn't good. So there's been some that have had success, but that's been more and more of a mixed bag than I would say. But yeah, I mean, I think he can build a really good coaching staff. I think having his quarterback to start is going to be big. I'm going to be interested to see it, and how it looks going forward. But I think it's going to be an overall interesting situation, Mark.
In listening to the Ohio State guys that we have on every week, it seemed as though they always emphasized that Urban Meyer enjoyed recruiting, which many coaches don't. I don't think that I would. Yeah. It seems like a brutal grind. And it was always thought upon as being the number one reason why he has been as successful as he has recruiting. Well, that's taken off his plate, which is a positive to a certain extent, but also one of the reasons why he's as great as he is. If we collected, David, down through the years college coaches who, and again, I didn't mention, when I said Jimmy Johnson, Pete Carroll went through my mind as well, but I thought, just as you did, that I didn't want to make that comparison because he had already been with the Jets and Patriots. It seems as though more have been unsuccessful than have been successful, like a Jimmy Johnson.
Well, you know what, Mark? Remember what we've always talked about, though. But college. It used to be for years that college wanted to take from the pros and take those schemes to the, that they were using in the pros and take them to college. Now it's the opposite way around. So much of what's being used, design quarterback runs are being used more now. RPOs are being used. Spread offenses are being used. They basically took a lot of the things from college. And, there's a lot of, that's why I think that, when Arizona goes out and hires Cliff Kingsbury as their coach, maybe we shouldn't be surprised nowadays.
Yeah, there you go. There's a recent example. We have yet to see how it really is going to play out for him, but he's off to a decent start.
Yeah, I think that people are basically I also think people are looking for those innovative offensive-minded coaches to begin with. And Urban did do a lot with that power run spread offense, where he runs his quarterback. Although he adjusted with that a little bit, and then bringing in Ryan Day, who I think has brought in more of like a pro-style passing attack. So I wish him the best. I'm going to be really interested to see, once he gets that question about the health situation, how he deals with that, how he answers that one. But, Tony made a great point. He says in college, he really struggled through those losses. It was maybe one loss, or he only lost 9 games at Ohio State. But, how does he deal with those first few losses in the NFL? That's going to be also really interesting to see.
Yeah, he's a smart enough man, of course, to realize the math involved in this situation. You don't have to go 15-1 to go to the playoffs, that you can be successful at 10-6, 11-5, but I don't know if his body is going to respond in such a way. And of course, he steps into a situation in which he can't reasonably expect to be successful in year one. I don't know how he's going to respond to that. He has never lost. He's just never had anything close to a bad team. He's been able to compete for championships, and I'll say it all the time. Nick Saban's called the greatest of all time at the college level, and for good reason. And I don't think that's up for debate right now. But Urban Meyer's been a more consistent winner than Nick Saban has from start to finish throughout his career.
No, I still put Urban Meyer in the top 5 or 10. I mean, with what he's been able to do over multiple programs and the success he's had, and the 3rd highest winning percentage in the history of college football. Once you put yourself up there with guys like Rockne and Leahy, that's pretty good company.
Absolutely.
And he did it.
And they've got,
he did it in both leagues.
Yep. And they've got black and white pictures. So that doesn't discredit them. But if you're looking post-World War II, then Urban Meyer is the highest. If you want to take all sorts of championships out of it, and I know that's why they play, but as I like to outline, there is a subjective factor that's involved in the championship formula, as opposed to just going out there and winning games. And he's done it at a higher rate than anybody in modern college football history.
Right. Well, it's certainly going to be interesting to see. I wanted to get your opinion on it, Mark, and it's always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
You take care now. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I would like to give everybody out there some kind of definitive, yes, Urban Meyer is going to be successful, and then define what successful means. Everybody thinks Super Bowl, but if he went into this job and lifted this situation into a team that's going to the playoffs, and he goes to the playoffs 4 out of 6 years and then he's done, I would think that would be successful. It's not ultimately successful because you want to win the championship, but I would bank on Urban Meyer being successful. Am I convicted to the nth degree that he will be? No. There are differences between college and pro football. And but he's if he can stay healthy, he's a relatively young man. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark Rogers. It's Ballard again tonight. How you doing, man?
Hey, Ballard. I'm good.
Awesome. I wanted to get your thoughts on something because, I was just kind of sitting here thinking about the title win Bama had, and Mac Jones, Devontae Smith, Najee Harris. And when you look back at last year even, Joe Burrow, Clyde Edwards-Helaire for LSU, all those guys. I just named you two prolific elite offenses that won national championships.
Yes.
Well, we know the saying defense wins championships. Is it safe to say that because of all the recruiting, look at all the quarterbacks, all the top running backs and everything. Look at Clemson with Trevor Lawrence. Are we still in an era where defense wins championships, or are we in an era right now where we probably need to score 40, 50 points in a championship game just to win?
Bingo. We've changed eras. The eras have been flipped. I totally agree with that. I don't necessarily like it, but I agree with it. That certainly you need to have defensive talent and make stops, and that's certainly still an important part of the game, because if you do have great athletes on defense, just the standard at which you can expect a defense to play and put up numbers is different than it was even 5-6 years ago. And then if you go back to your favorite team and the defenses that they put up in 2011 and 12 in back-to-back championship years, those defenses gave up 10, 12 points a game.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the total yardage numbers. I know that at least one of those years they were below 300. They're giving up like 270 yards total offense a game, something like that.
Yeah.
That just can't be expected.
Yeah, I don't know when it started, because I kind of think right now. Remember when Bama won the Natty against Georgia? They were down 13-0 at the half, right?
Yeah.
Now, you could either look at it this way: Georgia's defense gave up because of the different quarterback they were unfamiliar with, or they put Tua in there because Nick Saban knew that he would have to throw the football downfield in order to score and win the game. I think it started there. And then you see Trevor Lawrence come in, Joe Burrow, Justin Fields, all these prolific quarterbacks that we're seeing now that are, Burrow just entered the NFL, Tua's in the NFL, throw Jalen Hurts in there. But you're fixing to hear in a couple months, Fields and Lawrence, names called on draft night.
Yep.
And, even going forward, Mac Jones is gone. He just declared for the draft today. Mm-hmm. We wish him the best of luck. We're going to miss him. We're going to miss Smitty and all them. But look at the up-and-coming quarterbacks. You'll have Brock Vandergriff at Georgia. Maybe they stick with JT Daniels, but even after that, Brock Vandergriff. Georgia's finally figured it out to get offense. It seems like they got that going. You got Bryce Young coming in at Bama. DJ Uiagalelei. I'm still getting used to that name.
Well done.
Yeah. But what you're seeing, I guess even throwing Auburn a little bit, it's not the best, but Bo Nix is a pretty decent quarterback, talented, and Gus Malzahn, he's gone now. We'll see what Brian Harsin can do, but, we're seeing that era now where it's not so much defensive backs, it's quarterbacks, and having to compete, you got to throw the football. You got to throw a bomb 80 yards downfield. You just have to move the football instead of getting stops. Now, defense is still important, but this is a new era of college football that I think is just gonna last a long time.
I think another thing that may have happened here, Ballard, is that there were teams spreading out the defense, going with 4 and 5 wide, going to the spread every play. So if we go back about 10 years, it's Oregon. They certainly brought innovation with Chip Kelly, and Washington State, of course, wherever Mike Leach went. But the difference is that there were teams with, Oregon had good talent, but if you looked at the recruiting classes that played in national championship games, they were in the 15 range in the country. They were good, full of talent, but they didn't have NFL talent like everywhere. Like when you watch a Alabama Clemson game from 15 or 16, or one of the Ohio State games, everybody's going to the NFL. Pretty much everybody on the team on the offensive side of the ball. Those Oregon teams, no, there were a couple guys. And then, of course, less on the Washington State and Texas Tech teams. But and we could go all over the place. Mike Gundy did a lot of things at Oklahoma State before anybody else did with some of the pass catchers he had. But what happened, I think, is that those things were being done at places where they either had no chance at all, like they're Hawaii, or they're playing in the Mountain West, and they just want to compete and do something different to where they can appeal to the fans and gain some attention and have a fighter's chance in a game in which they're overmatched. Or at a place like, again, Washington State, Texas Tech with Leach, where they've got decent talent, and this might give them a puncher's chance against Oklahoma or some of the heavyweights. Right. Or Oregon would be the best example because they had the best talent of anybody doing something really innovative and different. I think what accelerated this is when the Alabamas and the Clemsons and the LSUs caught on to this with that much talent.
Right.
And, of course, Oklahoma, during the end of Stoops' run and then into Lincoln Riley, they did as well. And that's where it's really taken off.
Yeah, and I would probably say, like you said, you mentioned teams, I think, like Oklahoma State or, Hawaii or, whatever. Like some teams that, like, aren't the Georgias or the Bamas or the Clemsons that kind of caught on to it and kind of started it. And it slowly progressed, I think. And I think it worked its way over here. And, teams just started to catch on. Alabama with A.J. McCarron, it was still a great offense, but compare it to what Tua did or what Mac Jones just did this year, Bama was more on the defensive side of the ball. Clemson, I guess, has always been on the defensive side of the ball. They still are today, but, Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, and you're slowly starting to see it work its way all around college football, where we're now in an offensive era. And again, like I mentioned before, it'll probably last a good while.
Yeah, and so what defenses do is you basically take one of two approaches. Of course, there's a whole lot more intricacy to it than this, but basically you take the approach that you're going to let the other team pitch and catch down the field, and you're going to play good red zone defense, and you're going to wait till they make a mistake. The quarterback's going to make an overthrow. There's going to be a tipped pass. They're going to commit a penalty to put them behind the chain, 2nd and 20. All those sorts of things. That's what you're waiting for, and you're going to tackle in space, basically. Going to tackle in space. Or you take an aggressive approach and think, we've got superior athletes, we can be aggressive, and they're going to score some points. Let's say you're Alabama and you're playing Ole Miss, and maybe this year's game wasn't the best example, or maybe it was, where you say, we've got better talent, but we know they got playmakers. They're a good team, and so they're going to score a bunch of points. But we're also going to make strip sacks, and we're going to bat passes at the line, and we're going to pick a few balls off.
Oh, yeah.
And therefore, it's going to be kind of a crazy, ugly, well, depending on your perspective, ugly game or crazy game. And, we're going to score so many points. We're going to win this game, 52-31, because we've got superior athletes. But they are going to make some plays and probably ring up 500 yards of total offense.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think that, I was just kind of thinking, I think a key factor in them winning on Monday night was not necessarily, of course their defense showed up. They gave up some points, don't get me wrong, but they faced an elite quarterback in Justin Fields, and at times made him look pretty pedestrian. He couldn't do a whole lot, and they shut him down. They bent, but they didn't break. They put up points, but it wasn't enough to keep up with what Mac Jones and Smitty and Najee and it was great to see a little bit of Waddle in there back from injury. It wasn't enough to keep up with what Alabama was doing offensively. And and again, I'll leave you with this. Like I said, we're just in that era where you you got to keep up with scoring. That's really where we're at now with all these elite running backs, receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks especially, just coming up in college football. I mean, it's not your old school type of game anymore, I don't think.
No doubt about that, Ballard. I'm going to take some of these other calls. I appreciate the call, sir.
Thank you, Mark. Have a good night.
All right. Again, anything related to college football is up for topic here. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Jeez. Hey, I'd say what really kicked off this new age offense, this key offense wins football games, was really Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow in Florida. Because if you remember those Florida 2008 offense in particular, you had a guy like Percy Harvin, a Swiss Army knife in him. You had a solid and elite receiver in Luis Murphy. You had David Nelson interior. You had the true freshman Deontay Thompson coming in at wide receiver. You had the explosiveness and Olympic speed of Jeff Ditz coming in. You had Chris Rainey coming in. You had powerful backs, but fast backs like Easton Moore, Emmanuel Moody there. And you had a guy like Tim Tebow who could throw the ball really wherever he wanted. It was going to be a completion in his Florida football career. And then I would say guys like Oregon and Hawaii caught on to that, and they started replicating it. And now it's gotten to the point where everybody has that quote-unquote Harvin 2.0, if you know what I mean by that, or this quote-unquote Tim Tebow 2.0 and all these 2.0s of that. And now you're moving into an age where you can have a decent defense, and not a national title defense, but score 50, 60 points and win a national title game. I think that's the era of football that we're in.
The other good thing that you bring up there right there, Chase, is that Urban Meyer, and I'm sure there were others, so I don't want to pin it on him as being the guy that figured this out, but he did this with all the guys that you just mentioned on the offensive side, and also defensively rotating guys and keeping them fresh and having multiple just waves of playmakers, and not just we throw it to two dudes and they're the two wide receivers that play all the time, two or three guys, but just bringing in waves of players and keeping them fresh, and they all do different things well. Like you just mentioned, they all have a specialty.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at Harvin. I mean, Harvin in particular, we could line him up in the slot. He could go down and burn a guy like Patrick Peterson on a deep route, but the same guy you could pull into the backfield and give a direct handoff to, and he could run 80 yards down the field and score. And now you're seeing that with the normal new age slot receiver. You're seeing a lot more jet sweeps. You're seeing a lot more of a quote-unquote air raid pro spread offense, as I call them, where it's mixing a pro ideology and a spread set in where you're utilizing a guy like Percy Harvin, you can line up near where you want on the field. A guy like a Luis Murphy that you can just send on deep routes and get the ball to him and he'll score on an easy touchdown. You get a guy like Deontay Thompson that could run any kind of routes that you want, and the guy's going to catch football. You got Olympic speed, but a somewhat powerful back in Jeff Ditz, who you can run on a wheel route, and he'll run down the sidelines and burn them. And on defense, on that OA defense, I remember you had guys like Ahmad Black and Major Wright. I remember that year in particular. I went to the games, the home games that year. Urban Meyer would rotate, where he'd have Major, who's normally a free safety, and strong safety, or DB. And Ahmad Black, who's normally a strong safety, would go to free safety or run slot DB to where they just never could catch on. And then you started seeing like these MAC teams and these smaller FCS teams catching on to that, and then it elevated to what it is today, where you're seeing guys like a Trevor Lawrence, a do-it-all Trevor Lawrence, who's you could say a Tim Tebow 2.0, who can move the ball wherever he wants. You've got that Chris Rainey running back and Travis Etienne. You've got all these Harvins that are all Harvin Murphys, Coopers, Thompsons that are on the receiving core, and you're seeing defenses where they're rotating players all over the place. I'd say what you're seeing is what Urban Meyer did at Florida is he pretty much removed the old mindset that you've got to have this elite beyond elite defense to win a championship, to where you now have got to have this elite beyond elite offense to win championships, just based off the talent that he brought in at Florida.
Yeah, I'm with you, Chase. All good points.
And another thing about Urban Meyer is, what's it going to be this time that he's going to fake to get out of this job, this NFL job, if he doesn't win a division 1 year? Is
I don't know.
Be kidneys this time?
Could be.
Going to be a kidney disease of some sort?
He's got a lot.
He's got to go on dialysis.
He's got a lot to choose from. There are a lot of ailments out there you can catch up. Yeah, that he can use.
That he can fake to get out of it if he doesn't meet the expectation. Because I can remember 2010, he would walk on the sidelines as I was at the game with his hand over his heart and have the medical staff constantly tending to him on the sidelines. The guy looked like he was about to die. Then just magically in 2011, he takes, a week after he retires, takes the ESPN job, goes 1 year, and then when Ohio State opens up, he takes that job, goes on this great run there. Then whenever he had Zach Smith, brain injury, he died on the sideline. Now then he went to Fox. Now he's got the Jaguar job. What is he going to do? Hold his back and say that he's paralyzed from the waist down and can't coach anymore? Then you'll see him walking around just fine on what CBS Sports. He's already gone through ESPN and Fox. What are you going to do now? Go to CBS, or is he going to go to? I know where he'll go to, SEC Network, to be with Tim Tebow, his best friend.
He could do that.
That's where he'll go.
Or this opens up NFL jobs. Once he gets an NFL coaching job, he can do, like you say, CBS with the NFL games.
Yeah, he can go to CBS, be a commentator for 1 to 2 years, and when another NFL job opens up, he'll say that, it's a miracle. I'm well when I can go coach. Like he is the Fred of Sanford and Son of college football and football in general. Oh, I'm coming home. What was her name again? Esther or whatever?
I think it was Elizabeth.
Yeah, all right.
All right, Chase. You have a good one. What happened there? All right. Had a few calls coming in. Just call back. We lost Chase, but we certainly, it's time to move on. All right. Okay. Hotel California. Guess an Eagles fan here. Man, this channel dead since Mark quit ESPN. Please explain. Man, we've never been more alive, thriving, pushing forward. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hurricane Logan. Hopefully it's not too dead for me to call in, right?
Heck no. Yeah, we're still here.
Silly comment. Anyway, man, that last guy hated Urban. What did Urban Meyer do to him?
Well, I thought he was, at first I thought he was a big Urban Meyer fan because he talks about all his innovation and how he utilized personnel and
like flipping a light switch.
And then he banned. I don't know that Florida fans were too happy that Urban left them. They still, or maybe.
Like everything is Florida fan. I'm a Miami fan. I have no hate towards Urban. Good luck to him, honestly. I really hope he remains healthy and does something good with the Jags and himself.
It will be interesting. I know that.
So, you already know what I'm here to talk about. Have you been following the updates with Miami and their defensive staff?
No, give them to me. I'm going to have to chase him down. We got the wholesome one coming on tomorrow, so we got a Miami Live at 4 o'clock tomorrow.
That's it. Okay, that's cool. So, this is what's happening. This is not a rumor. Blake Baker is staying as the defensive coordinator, which I knew was going to happen, obviously, because, performances that our defense has put out against the top-notch teams that we played and lost to, you usually figure someone like that would get fired right away, kind of like Enos did right after the bowl game. So he's staying as defensive coordinator. However, this is from Manny. Manny said he'll be calling the plays on game day. Interesting.
Manny's going to call the plays, the defensive plays, but he's not the D coordinator. So he's demoted him to a certain extent. He's definitely demoted him, just not entitled.
And we brought in Jeff Simpson. I don't know if you know who Jeff Simpson is.
Jeff Simpson. Yeah, I don't know. I am not thinking of who that is off the top of my head. Where's he coming from?
Defensive line coach. He's from I believe. Well, let me get this right because I don't want to get on here and sound stupid myself.
Jeff Simpson.
I honestly figured you knew about all this, considering how many Miami fans are all over your channel.
Yeah, I didn't really. Yep, go ahead.
Jeff Simpson. He's coaching the defensive line. Blake Baker's going to remain the defensive coordinator, but Manny will call the plays on game day. And DeMarcus Van Dyke, who was in charge of recruiting last year, is now our cornerbacks coach. He got promoted, which is interesting, bringing in T-Rob as the D-backs coach. But, I don't really know how I feel about it, to be honest.
So we've got a defensive back coach and a cornerbacks coach.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's why I was trying to get at that with you and see what you thought from, obviously, the outside perspective. A lot of Miami fans don't like it, and they're literally screaming fire Manny Diaz like right now, which I can't get along with right now, to be honest.
Well, you can look at it a few different ways. So the first and most obvious thing is that Blake Baker's been demoted. If you're a defensive coordinator and you're not getting to call the shot, so you've worked with the defense the whole week, you've built a game plan, and then you walk on the field on Saturday and somebody else is calling the shots play to play. That's kind of I don't have an analogy for that right off the bat, but I guess, it's like cooking the meal, but you don't get to eat dinner. You get sent to your room or something.
You want to hear the best part?
What's that?
The part that Wholesome's going to go crazy about tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know who Mike Rumpf is and what he did to Miami, right?
Sure.
What he was doing?
Yep.
They moved him to a recruiting role.
Oh, and nobody's pleased with what he does in that role.
Yeah, he couldn't recruit.
So that was
supposed to really develop at corner, and now he's recruited.
Yeah, so that's the weak side of his game, and now they focused him on recruiting.
So they moved one of our best recruiters, not the best, but one of them, DeMarcus Van Dyke. They promoted him to corner coach, and they moved the worst recruiter for corners that used to coach them to a recruiting role.
Now,
so you understand why maybe the fans are upset, but you got to let it play out first. I wouldn't let it play out against Alabama and then make jumps either, because we know how that's probably going to turn out.
Well, Hurricane, this is how I see the cornerback DB coach relationship working out, and I could see how this might have been a good move, in that we understand how much the secondary struggled last year. So you bring in Tavares Robinson, which everybody's happy about. He's proven himself. He knows what he's doing. So everybody's good with that hire. So he takes over the entire secondary. They bring in a cornerbacks coach who's already, knows the team's already involved, knows the system, knows everything, and has a relationship with everyone. So that doesn't mean that Tavares Robinson isn't over the cornerbacks as well. He's over the entire secondary. I think that could be a plus, that they're giving more attention to the corners. Maybe there's going to be a lot of detailed things that Tavares Robinson is going to give to who's taking over the corners. Simpson? No.
Simpson is taking over the D-line. DeMarcus Van Dyke, who is
Van
actually
Dyke.
a great
Yes.
player,
Okay.
extremely fast at Miami, is taking over the corners.
Yeah, so Van Dyke takes over the corner. Okay. That Robinson, if he's as good as I think he is, I'm sure could have Van Dyke really hone in on certain aspects of the cornerback development, and I think that could be a good thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. As long as their roles and the moves that were done, as long as what they're supposed to be doing by the name of their roles, as long as that stands, then I think that they could definitely feed and learn off each other. And I also personally think that Blake Baker could be gone not this upcoming year, but the year after, and maybe T. Rob taking over as defensive coordinator. That's an early prediction, of course.
Okay, sure. And I think that was part of the discussion we had a couple weeks ago when Javaris Robinson was being talked about even before he was hired, that, he could eventually be the DC.
Probably the worst news I've heard all offseason, though, is Tate Martell intends to return to Miami after opting out of the 2020 season. I hate you guys for giving us Tate Martell. I really do, just so you know that.
Well,
I hold you fully accountable.
Is there really anything that he's doing wrong, though? Is he hurting you in any way? He's just kind of a bother. He's just kind of a
wasted scholarship.
He's a wasted scholarship. Okay, that I will grant you. He's a wasted scholarship. He's a reminder of a mistake that at one point people were all going crazy and jumping around that Tate Martell was coming to town.
I never was, but you didn't have film on him in college to really get crazy about it, except for when I think Ohio State played, what was it, Rutgers or Syracuse?
I think it was Rutgers. Yeah, he went like 5 for 6, and he threw some passes to guys that were wide open. Yeah, that was meaningless.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. The reason I don't like it is because Manny keeps preaching culture change, and yet this guy has walked out of the huddle after not being announced starter. And he opted out of a season for God knows what, and it's just like, I don't know, I guess allowing that in the locker room for a guy that really hasn't earned anything with the team and the program to still be a part of it, it's just frustrating. But then one thing I can preach too with the culture change is you've never ever seen all these older guys decide to come back. Not that they were really going to go anywhere or had a chance to go anywhere, but regardless, when people didn't have a chance to go anywhere, they would still leave, and then it'd be a bad ending for them in the NFL, or not even a beginning. So I think that's a good start in the right direction with the guys that we've been bringing back.
Yeah, I again, my bottom line analysis is that they were not significantly, decidedly better this year. But I don't know if that's them making the right moves and developing players. Developing players, if you could put it all down into one blurb, one phrase, this, which is wrong with this program and has been for a long time, is developing players. So I don't know that they're developing players better, that they've developed in certain areas, or they just, again, signed a better quarterback, signed a better offensive coordinator, and signed a kicker that could make field goals. And that's all that happened this year. I tend to think that's what it is, because I'm not seeing development in the secondary. I'm not seeing development along in the linebacker unit at wide receiver either. Those are the three units. Offensive line, I'll give them a little bit. They're better. They're still not good.
Definitely, yeah. But I think De'Aaron King and Lashley complement it, so it's kind of hard to evaluate.
Yep.
I think next season is going to be the biggest, what do you call it? I guess like the biggest jump to see if people are actually being developed because of what we saw in the field this year. One thing I would say, too, that the head scratcher to me, and I want your opinion on, is how do you feel about, and me being a Miami fan, it's much easier to point out. I'm sure it's everywhere, but you sit there and you see fans who tweet at players or comment at players, and they say, you know, the guys who leave early, they call them trash and all kinds of nonsense. But then they sit there and say coaches can't develop. But then they sit there and say they're coming back, and then the fans say, oh, well, where else were you going to go? It's like, which one is it? Is it the player or is it the coach? Because you tweet two different things, and that's so frustrating to see. I'm sure you understand what I'm saying.
Oh, this is why it's frustrating for a lot of other reasons here. So first and foremost, if you just want to be a decent person in life and treat people well, then you shouldn't be on there just calling people trash unless they did something that is of a criminal or immoral nature. But when we're just talking about kids making decisions on where they want to go to school, and we have this backlash on Twitter because somebody wants to go to Auburn instead of Miami, then that's ridiculous. So don't these, first of all, many of the fans are so stupid that they go after players that have yet to make a decision. They have yet to sign. We all know that I don't know what the percentage is, but let's say 25% of them flip anyway. So as soon as, player A comes out in the middle of the football season and says, I've declared I'm going to commit to Florida, and then the Miami fan base goes crazy, not realizing, many of them, that he may flip. Leave him alone, encourage him, maybe even congratulate him. I don't know. If you want to play the game right, then you're not going to pile on him and call him trash, because then he's never going to sign with, well, I shouldn't say never, but he's less likely to sign with your team. So at least wait until he signs, number one. Number two, with this transfer portal business, nothing's ever set in stone for a 4-year career anymore. He may be looking at look at how many players in the transfer portal. This is a trend that we're seeing, is that we're seeing players whose second or third choice originally, when they go to the transfer portal 2 years later, they're going to, if you look back at their commitment list and who was close on them, they're tending to go to one of those teams, one of those programs that they were very interested in. So it just doesn't make any sense for these fans to be jumping on these players. Plus, even if that player gets away and is never part of the program, other players who are interested in your program see how the fan base treats players.
Yep. So one last thing I did want your opinion on, so you can get someone else on. I know I'm always on here while talking up a storm. I wanted what you think so far of Manny going all the way back to last year. After the bowl game, he cleared out the staff on the offense, brought in Lashley, who was proven statistically to be a good offensive coordinator, and especially a good fit schematically for Miami and the talent that we bring in there. All the transfers he brought in, every single one of them made an impact, like a huge impact. The defensive end, the kicker, the quarterback, etc. And then you look at this year, he's pretty much kind of cleared the room on defense. But the big thing that Miami fans are holding on to is Blake Baker is still the coordinator, but Manny's going to call the plays. And we did bring in Jeff Simpson, who was formerly coaching at Miami and was a great defensive line coach. But then he made some weird moves with Rump recruiting now and Van Dyke being promoted from recruiter to cornerback coach. How do you feel about Manny's current, state as a head coach at Miami? Does he deserve this year to let it play out? Because honestly, logically speaking, I think he definitely does. It's only his, second year or third year,
All right. So here's my thought on the transfers. The transfers were no-brainers, and I'm not discrediting Manny. I'm just saying they were no-brainers in terms of selections. It's not like he went and scouted and found talent that was undervalued and brought it in and it surprised everyone. He brought in Roche, who was the sack leader in the American Conference. He brought in Jalen Phillips, who was the #1 high school football player in America. Brought in De'Ara King, who accounted for 50 touchdowns in one season in Houston. So the people he brought in, we knew were going to be good. The kicker, Borgalis, one of the best kickers in the nation. So those were obvious selections. Now, to his credit, they didn't go somewhere else. Do you happen to know where those guys are from? Jalen Phillips, Roche, in terms of where they're originally from, like from a high school standpoint? Were they Florida guys?
Roche, I think the chat, we always got my hands in the chat, correct me. I think Roche was Texas, and I know Phillips, Jake Garcia, a lot of California guys who have gotten his transfers who have been successful.
So this is where I credit Manny, is that he brought in guys that could have gone anywhere. These guys were so good that they could have gone, certainly Roche and Phillips, and Borgales could have gone anywhere. King could go anywhere, but he might have had to be a backup if he went to a really elite place. So he must be, and he's bringing him to a team that went 6-7 the year before that hasn't won much of anything for a long, long time. So it's not like he could say, "Hey, we're Georgia, and this is what we've done, and this is what we're doing right now. Come play for us." He must be a good draw in regards to contacting, communicating, building a bond, a relationship, and selling the program. He's brought in good recruiting classes, the current ones like 10th in the country. So he's a good salesman for the program. In terms of Red Lashley, everybody pretty much predicted that to be a good hire, and Enos was so bad, he was able to get a good offensive coordinator and cut him loose, and I think that was largely successful. I thought Red Lashley did a really good job.
I think he helped out our O-line a lot.
Yeah, I think exactly. He knows what he needs to do. It's not all just about the skill position players. He knows that he has to, alter the offense for the offensive line.
Right.
Again, it's gonna take a few more seasons to totally evaluate, but it's player development that's going to show that Manny's a better coach than the last 15 to 20 years of coaches.
Are you still there?
Yep. That was my bottom line response right there. You got me?
Sorry, your phone cut out. Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think Manny is a second-year head coach, and that's the bottom line. He's a second-year head coach going into his third, and that's no one's fault except the Board of Trustees and the AD. I put more of it on the Board of Trustees because I think the AD is a great fundraiser for the program, and that's fun to sit there and hire coaches like T-Rob, etc. But I think with what he's done so far, and unfortunately a guy that's learning on the job is such a big position, I mean the biggest on a football team, I think there's no reason that we shouldn't give Manny not only maybe one chance unless we lose like we did last year against FIU, Duke, LA Tech, shut out in the bowl. We lose like that, a little different. But if we see, maybe another 3-loss season at most, depending on who we lose to and how we do, we should definitely give him more than a year. Because that's Miami's biggest problem, and you know that firsthand. Is we just go through coaches like it's nothing.
Well, with a few, you had to. They were just underachieving that much, and obviously Rick left you, so you had no choice there.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's generally. I think he gets outcoached on game day, and his teams haven't been prepared against the better teams. But like you say, I think that goes back to being a new head coach. And I think everything else he's doing well. Recruiting, transfer portal, the offensive coaching hires.
Honestly, I think he's had some good hires. T-Rob is a big-time hire. I think that's a big-time hire, especially with what he's going to do in recruiting in that part of the country. That's a big deal. But we'll let it play out because a lot of people dog Manny and say, this year and last year's defense was his. But when Manny was actually the defensive coordinator, we had a top 3 overall defense, and we led number 1 in a lot of spots.
So the concern I have about the Blake Baker decision is, okay, if he legitimately sees things in Blake Baker that he does well, and it's things that we may not see. I'm sure, obviously, Blake Baker has a job at Miami for a reason. He does certain things well. He's had a football coaching career. So if Manny Diaz legitimately sees things that he does well, but says you are not performing at the defensive coordinator level for a program like Miami, so we're going to value and we're going to take advantage of what you do well, but I got to call the shots on game day. You're going to continue because you prepared the defense really well, or you do A, B, and C extremely well. We're going to take advantage of that. Then I think it's a good decision. If he just kept him because they're buddies, and thought, well, I got to make this look good to the fan base, and he's not getting the job done, so I'll take that over. I'll kind of hide him but keep him as D coordinator and everybody's happy, then that's not the best judgment.
That's what worries me because, the biggest thing about this season was Miami fans talking about Blake Baker and get rid of him. And at one point during the season, last season, Manny said that this is his defense. He's in every meeting, blah, blah, blah. So he kind of took full accountability for what's going on with the defense, whether Blake's calling it or not. So I kind of feel like, I'll say I don't know if he's actually going to call the plays or if he said that to quiet the fan base down and comfort them a little bit. But that's obviously something we will know and see next season because we saw the difference between him calling plays and Blake calling plays. But we also had a lot of guys that went to the NFL once Blake took over. So, I don't know. We'll see.
All right, Hurricane. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Sure. Talk to you soon.
Yep.
All right, my man, Mr. TW. Back on here with the contribution. Appreciate that so much. I'll get to this call, but I want to certainly recognize the super chat here.
The call will start at the beep.
So, Mr. TW, thank you again. What do we got here? Looking forward to a normal 2021. Hat tip to these players who are going through all the testing and isolation just to play. We need to give them a ton of credit. Click the like button, y'all. Absolutely. Click the like button. Share these videos on social media. When we go live, and I need to do a better job of going on Twitter when we go live and say, hey, we're going live. I do that with the team-specific shows, Florida State, Ohio State, Miami. But to be able to come on here and say, hey, we're going live, come on in. And then if you guys follow me on Twitter, MarkRogersTV, MarkRogersTV on Twitter, follow me, get the message out there. We need to build up these shows. We had some great shows the latter half of December on through the playoffs with like 550 to 850 on the line. 65 people on the line. Of course, there's going to be less interest once the season's over, but still, we need to do better than that. And we're going to continue to do these shows based on your individual contributions. Thank you, Mr. TW. And sponsorships. Get an idea for a sponsorship. And let me correct myself, not an idea. I need a firm contact to a sponsor. Please hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. All right, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. This is Mr. TW. How you doing?
Oh, there he is. I'm talking about you while you're on the line. There we go.
Yeah, my ears were burning. I had to call you.
Well, thank you so much for the contribution tonight.
Hey, no problem. Hey, since this is kind of an open forum, I just a couple of things. I don't want to tie the line too long. And I kind of said it in that super chat. I don't think enough credit's given to these young men for staying in, playing the game. If anyone out there has had the COVID test, I've had a couple of them. They are extremely unpleasant. I couldn't imagine getting those 3 and 4 times a week. And they did that, and they isolated. And more than that, for whatever reason, the sports media was obsessed with telling these young men who are in the top 1% of 1% healthiest people in America that they were going to die if they played. And so they played anyway. They had a commitment not only to their future, but to their university. And I'll tell you what, I'm very proud of these young men and these coaches and their staffs for sucking it up when everything was dark and horrible, and it made it sound like they were going to die if they even came in contact with COVID, and they just gutted out and played anyway through all of the scheduling. I'm an SEC guy. Of course, my team, the Razorbacks, I think we got the toughest schedule in the history of college football. But these teams played. They played their hearts out, and I wanted to lead off with that and just say that I think a ton of credit belongs to these players.
No, it's well stated on your part. They did all those things in the face of a lot of uncertainty. It's easy to sit here now and say, most of the games got played about 85%. And when we saw games get canceled, people would complain, oh, what's going on, really? And we won't get into the guidelines or the judgment from that side because they had nothing to do with that. They simply had to go through everything that you just outlined and do it over and over and over, day after day after day after day. And again, I think Nick Saban did a nice job many times in highlighting his team and their ability to get through this adversity. He always went that route when he was asked about this particular team, that they showed themselves to be unselfish, to be team-oriented, to be in it together, to understand that they would have to sacrifice, to be leaders, to do all those things, to do the right things, and then to pay attention and to follow the instruction to stay safe and to avoid positive tests. And I thought Nick Saban, among all the other things that he does right, was really good about highlighting that part of his team anytime that I saw him asked about his team's preparation for the season this year.
Right. And that for me is huge, when the coaches were responsible enough, and, you know, I could take a jab at an interconference rival. You know, it seemed like LSU had COVID from the beginning of it to right up to the end. But I love how these coaches like Nick Saban, Sam Pittman, you know, they preached the importance of this to their players, that, hey, if you guys test positive, just 3 or 4 of you, you jeopardize not only a game, but the season. And so, and you know, kudos to these players for sticking with it. Like I said, if you've ever had a COVID test, that's a horrible experience. And they did it 3 or 4 times a week, which I think was impressive. And real fast, I don't know if you got this, but it just came across the wire, breaking news. Devontae Smith actually just scored another touchdown on Ohio State just now.
Yeah, well, that's not surprising. So I can't wait to see the highlight of that one. He probably did about 3 different turns in the backfield that faked him out, and they didn't know where he was. Or they got him matched up maybe this time not against the linebacker. Maybe they had a D tackle trying to chase him down the field.
Maybe a grad assistant came out.
Could be.
I don't know. But hey, let me kind of end it with this, because I think this is kind of important. I think this offseason, fans, media personalities like yourself, I think it's time to ratchet up the heat for a playoff expansion. I think in 8 minimum, I would be plenty happy with the 16-team playoff. Of course, you would have to start your last 2 weeks of the season. There's a way to do it. It's not complicated. I think the Mike Leach video where he explained it, and if no one's ever seen it, when the live show is over, after you've clicked the like button, after you share the video, then go find the Mike Leach video where he talks about the college football playoff. I think he wants it at 32 teams. We are making the bowl game insignificant. We are making bowl games just an exhibition game. All it is a spring season game almost in the back half of the season, and it's just, these players are not going to play in the, you know, Independence Bowl or, you know, Bubba's Skull and Tobacco Bowl if there's no incentive for it. They're just playing one more game, especially if they're going to risk injury that would jeopardize the next level. And I think by opening it up, I don't understand why it sounds like the loudest talking heads in college football, guys like Paul Feinbaum, and of course I don't want to put you in an awkward position, but this last season lost a lot of respect for his credibility with the whole COVID thing. I mean, he was the loudest one screaming that if we wanted college football, that we didn't care about these players. And then people like him that are constantly shutting down the playoff expansion. I don't think they understand how irrelevant the bowl games are going to be in 5 years. 5 years from now, they're not going to be able to sell enough tickets to turn the lights on for the bowl game if we do not include this in an advancement to the next level. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, my thoughts are that you are unfortunately right. And what I mean by that is that I love the bowl games. I think the bowl games are phenomenal. But I'm living in 1990 when I say that, because I'm recognizing the same thing that you are. I love the bowl games and I love the matchups, and And I think that, for example, if we had the full roster of Oklahoma and Florida playing in the Cotton Bowl and not that joke of a game that we saw, especially on the Florida side, then we don't see a 5-touchdown blowout, and we see two of the best teams in the country go at it, and it's fun and it's exciting, and the winner takes value in winning. Being there used to be value. There used to be a ton of value in being the Cotton Bowl champion and hoisting the trophy and finishing whatever number 5 in the country. But like you say, this is a different era of athlete, and they are too savvy to be sucked into that. They have a bent toward the future, toward their future opportunities, or they are weighing the value of the competition versus their health, and they basically see it as playoff or bust. And if they can't play in a playoff, then they're most likely not going to play in the bowl game. And now, that started to hit certain bowl games and was just a couple guys. I remember 2015, Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey. That raised a lot of talk because they were the first two real hot headline players. And then there might have been, a defensive lineman over here. I remember a couple really good players, but not guys that were headliners, followed suit that year. But now you're talking about, oh my goodness, like I'm just going to throw out one game, Northwestern Auburn. They each had 6 or 8 guys out. So you're talking about 15 to 20 players in a football game not going to play. And they're typically 15 of the 20 best players in a game between two teams that are, your top 15 to 25 teams in the nation. So you're about to watch a good game, but then it's not nearly as good a game. So I don't know what I don't know what to respond to in that is I used to take complaints about bowl games, and people would watch on TV and see empty stadiums and think that was indicative of the lack of popularity or interest in the bowl. Well, no, that was basically, a team from, that was Pitt and Kansas State playing in Florida, when only about 5,000 people are going to travel from each school, and then a handful of people are going to show up from Orlando around the area that just want to watch a football game. So you're going to have, 18,000 people in a 75,000 seat stadium because there was a lot of travel. But I know from working at a TV network all during that time, the TV ratings for bowl games have always been phenomenal. They're phenomenal, even for the worst bowl games. So people watch the games because it's the holidays. They're at home. They want to watch football. And it's the only football game on, except for they start to overlap a little on New Year's Day. But basically the entire time, that's the only game you can watch. So you want to watch football, you're going to watch Wisconsin and Wake Forest play. And so the ratings have always been good. Now, what you're bringing up with all these opt-outs, I got to think, especially for these bigger, because when you turn on, UCF and BYU played what could have been a really good game. It didn't turn out to be, but it was one of the earlier bowl games that had a little cachet to it. Well, that's not going to have many opt-outs because they don't have high-end talent. And I don't know how many guys opted out. I don't think maybe any. But I would think that the TV ratings are suffering for games like the one I just mentioned, Oklahoma, Florida. As soon as people know Pitts isn't playing, the whole wide receiver core is not playing, all these guys aren't playing, I got to think that it's even taking a hit on TV. I don't know that. I haven't looked at the numbers. Maybe I'll do that after I get off here, look at the TV ratings for the bowl games this year.
Well, not everyone is, I feel like you and I are probably dinosaurs. We're relics from an age long ago, purist of college football. I would watch it only because I'm looking forward to the next year. But I'm also the guy who flies from California to Fayetteville to watch the spring game. And my daughter and I, she's 9, we fly back to 1 or 2 games for the Razorbacks every year. Of course, with the exception of this year, we did. And there would be that aspect of it, but there's just got to be an incentive. There's got to be an incentive for this. And even, this year I was so disappointed. And it's not that I have a personal thing against Notre Dame. I do think the fact that
they are not a part of a conference should be a very, very big strike against them. They played in the playoff and was terrible. It was almost like watching Oklahoma last year. I was so disappointed to not see Cincinnati get in. This would have been a perfect year to bring in a group of five. I think Cincinnati would have played better than Notre Dame did. Of course, I think A&M should have got in. But I do believe if we expanded to a minimum of 8, then you could either bring in one group of 5 or have a 4-team playoff with a group of 5. The winner of that would get into the 8 team. You'd get an automatic bid into the 8-team playoff. Basically, that would be more centered toward the Power 5. I see, just looking into the crystal ball, I see a day where the Power 5 is going to pretty much band together and be done with the NCAA. I think they'll make a super PAC and pretty much be done with the NCAA. Their inconsistencies are just staggering. And so I think this season showed us how irrelevant the NCAA is as an organization. And Michael Hogg, I read your comment. Yes, I'm still here. I think they made themselves irrelevant, and I think we could see a group of 5 or a Power 5 super conference that goes independent of the NCAA and would suck in some of these Memphis teams, the SMUs, things like that. And I would be for it. I truly would. The only thing I don't like about college football is the NCAA office. I think they play way too much favoritism. And maybe this showed us a little bit about that. Maybe with the name, image, likeness deal. Again, I'm a purist. I don't want to see players getting paid. I am not the sharpest knife in the drawer, and I don't understand how they can't figure this out. I think if you get them like a policy, an insurance policy type thing, that if you graduate, and here's the incentive for them to play that final year, if you graduate, you can cash out and make X amount of dollars of this policy if you graduate. Or if you don't, but if you go above the second round, you don't get it because you won't need it, or something like that. There's a way to do it outside the NCAA. I just don't want to lose the purity of college football, that they're doing it for love of university. I mean, that sticker on the side of their helmet's got to mean something. It's got to mean something, whether it's a Razorback or it's a U for Miami or what. That thing has got to mean something to them. And I think the moment you start slapping greenbacks on the table, then they're going to go where the money is, where they got a bigger chance of it. I'm a purist in that sense.
Well, that's a great thought.
I know I just went all over. I went all over the map on that, but I just think there's guys that are a lot smarter than me. How come you can't figure out? It's like the XFL did, or whoever it was, the last spring league, where they said there's 3 tiers. There's your high tier, mid tier, low tier that you're going to pay. These 5 high-end 4-star and 5-star recruits will say, okay, we'll guarantee that if you graduate, we're going to put money up in a policy. You'll get $250,000 a year if you graduate, and don't go higher than the second or third round, whatever they agree upon. And then you tier it on down. And there's an incentive for them to now get a degree, graduate. Because as we know, NFL means not for long, and even your Heisman Trophy winners a lot of times burn out in 2 seasons. So I would love to see them give an incentive in this name, image, likeness, whether it's a policy. I'm not using the right word. It's not an insurance policy. I can't think of the right word right now. But that if you graduate, you get it. If you get hurt, you still get it. You just have to graduate.
It's worth exploring. I can't really go through all the ins and outs of what you would have to do some long brainstorming sessions to figure out the pros and cons and the best way to approach it. It's got potential, though.
What do you think about Super PAC, though, or a kind of a secession out of the NCAA and forming
Yeah,
like
well,
a Power 5 conference.
yeah, as this was unfolding starting back in August, I was saying the exact same thing, that it was obvious that these conferences have no connection to each other. They may communicate a little bit because they need to play against somebody, but as it turned out, they all came up with their own decisions, and they can act uniformly or unilaterally, and that the NCAA had no say in what now has become the greatest the event in terms of impacting a college football season. The NCAA was mute. They were non-existent. They were not involved in the conversations, the decisions. They even said that themselves. So the conferences basically went into a shell and determined what was best for themselves. And then because we are trying to determine a playoff that makes sense, there needs to be connection between these conferences. So there needs to be, some type of committee, organization that connects these conferences, and they can leave them alone involving a lot of things, but they need to at least connect them from a scheduling standpoint. And the reason I say scheduling is because I think scheduling is the most important factor that is going to make for an equitable, fair, reasonable playoff. And you bring up people's playoff proposals. I put forward a playoff proposal in 1984. So that's when I first threw one out there and put it together. I didn't just throw it out there. I wrote like 80 pages on it. But since then, I've certainly posted many videos that are buried thousands of videos deep. So I guess I'll have to recut those. But I've got a few things that I believe need to be inherent in a functioning playoff. And one is scheduling. Two is making a decision on what to do with a group of five. And you alluded to that. You either include them formally or you exclude them. You don't do neither. That they're doing neither right now. They're teasing them by saying they're included, but they're really not included. So you formally include them to say you get one spot at the table out of 8 or 16 or whatever, or you say, go run your own playoff or do whatever you want, but this is a Power 5 playoff. Do one or the other. Don't tease them.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, I watched, for instance, Cincinnati. I consider myself an overall true college football fan. I really don't pay much attention to the – I like the NFL. And it's nothing that has to do with the current climate of politics. Have always been a purist for college. I love college football. And to watch Cincinnati pull off what they did, Liberty, Coastal Carolina, let's not forget, BYU was highly touted coming into this year. That had it not been for COVID, they were talking, BYU was almost a shoe-in for the playoff. And Coastal Carolina handled them. So at SMU, look at what Sonny Dykes has done at SMU. We got to remember, I still remember, now I was a kid, but I still remember when SMU got handed the death penalty. Look at where they are now. What an incredible, ESPN 30 for 30 type thing.
Yep.
Bringing them back in, and to just dangle the carrot always 2 inches past their reach. It's not good enough. There has to be a system that allots, and if there is a 16-team system, you can allot a one-loss group of 5 teams. You can allot 2 or 3 one-losses and 1 or 2 undefeated. I just think that, a rising tide lifts all ships. If you spread that out, if you expand it, and there's ways to do it, and then I think you're going to get buy-in from the players to continue to play in the postseason, and you're going to get more buy-in from fans. Look, I'm a diehard. I get it. If my Razorbacks, especially after the hellish 5 years we've had, if they were playing in the Toilet Bowl, I would go to it. If they were playing in Shreveport at the Weed Eater Independence Bowl, I'm flying back to it. But that's me. I'm a diehard. I understand a lot of fans aren't that diehard, but if there is even a hope to reach the postseason, like you said, they're going to pack the stadiums out. The ratings numbers are going to go through the roof, and I'm very interested to see what rating numbers were on bowl game this year.
All right, man. Appreciate the call, the support, everything.
Yes, sir.
Have a great night.
You guys, it's good talking to you. Everyone, click the like button or you're going to get COVID.
There it
Click
is. Mr. TW getting the job done. Michael, so David Knight threw it out earlier in the chat. I had hoped to get to it. I hope David's still around talking about merchandise. So this is what I think I'll do, David, and thank you so much for bringing that up. David is at the forefront of the merchandising campaign. All right. I take notes while I'm on with all of you because I'm constantly thinking of things I need to do and things that you're reminding me of that I need to work on. So, and the to-do lists are ridiculous around here. You know, they're just I just started clean ones and they're not even filled out. Anyway, so for merchandise, David, I'm going to run a poll and see what people want. So David put in the chat, hey, would somebody be interested? Would people be interested in a hoodie, a t-shirt, a this or that? So I'm going to run a poll and we'll collect numbers on merchandise. Michael's got a good question here. Hurry up with the gear, talk about free advertising, and are you going to create a website as well? Okay. Okay. All right. This is all the stuff I have recently purchased to upgrade our channel here. Just tripod, cameras. What's that? I don't even know what that is. And I still haven't bought a laptop. Just all sorts of stuff. Okay? We got like 8 boxes here. Okay. And that doesn't include this baby. It's being largely underutilized, and also this. So I got to learn all this stuff. And I'm trying to produce content every day. So a website, no, that's way beyond me. But there is a fine gentleman out there, and we're in talks right now. And he may be responsible and taking on the project of building out a website for the Voice of College Football. So, Michael, no, I can't slam anything more into about 18 hours of work a day because I got to learn how to run all this stuff I just piled up on that chair and produce content and build out 12 channels. We've got 12 YouTube channels. So I'm not going to build a website, but I appreciate you, Michael, for asking. That's a great question. Thank you so much for reminding me. Most likely. So the deal's not done, but I am going to be given a large, enormous assist from some folks that you may know in building a website because we cannot be reliant on YouTube. You can't build a business on YouTube. Really can't. MarkRogersTV, the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it was just a suggestion, but I got a feeling hopefully by the time the season starts, everything gets put in motion for you and you get the stuff done.
I thought I was going to do that last off season, but there's something called ESPN that's not in my way anymore. So they were taking up about 50 hours of my week every week. So now they're not.
That is true and stuff like that. No, but I mean, if you need help, I'm sure as many millions and millions of people that follow you and stuff, we are willing to help you out, though, man, to get the process going faster if you need it.
Millions of people. If I had millions of people following me, then I wouldn't even buy this stuff. I'd say, hey, this laptop and taking calls on my iPhone might be good enough. We'll just do that. But we're going to get all that cleaned up. Michael, I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate your interest, though. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome to thank for what you're doing for us. Hey, speaking about your laptop, wouldn't the insurance cover that? Since it's getting replaced?
In getting what? My laptop replaced?
Yes.
This laptop's so old. No, this is way beyond the warranty. Yeah, one fine night about a month ago, I had this baby here, as I typically did, and I'm working on it, and all of a sudden, yes, I'm always drinking water. Suddenly, like a full water bottle spilled all over it, and I couldn't save it in time, and it is fried.
Mm-hmm. Not bad. Hey, I don't know if you heard this or not today, and if you might talk about it, but what do you think? What's your take on Notre Dame getting Cincinnati's defensive coordinator for their DP5, especially with them playing this year tough?
Well, I did post a video on that. I think that's a phenomenal addition for Notre Dame because, okay, here's a guy that's worked with Luke Fickell, who we know is a tremendous defensive mind, coached under Urban Meyer, had the Ohio State defense under him. So then he works with Marcus Freeman, who played at Ohio State, suited up for 51 games there, was a tremendous linebacker, not a star, but a starter. And a guy who's been at, Kent State, Purdue, done a fine job there at Cincinnati. His 3 years at Cincinnati, they have ranked number one in the conference in all the major statistical categories. He's developed players there. He's only 31 or 32 years old. He was playing college football in 2009. So you're talking about a guy that can speak their language, connects with them, has the respect. They don't have to look at black and white pictures to see Marcus Freeman on the football field. So I think that is an A+ hire.
Yep, that's where they could be interesting. See, the thing I'm trying to figure out, I don't know if you followed Jeff Brom when he was at Western Kentucky and in the first few years at Purdue, but do you think he might have made a mistake getting rid of Nick Holt?
Yeah.
Or do they have to part ways?
This may not be the most educated answer you've ever received from me, but based on their first-year performance under Nick Holt, compared to what had been accomplished there on that side of the ball before, I don't know why they got rid of Nick Holt.
I don't know. I was just saying, because there's been different reasons, but I didn't know and stuff like that. So, I don't know. Yeah, we're still.
And Michael, the one thing, not to cut you off, I apologize, that you've brought up several times is I might be getting my years mixed up, but last year, 2019, and then even into this year, the injuries, now injuries should not be an excuse, but that team has suffered more injuries than just about anybody, most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But last year, 2019 was the injury-filled season, but I think last year they pretty much might have just given it up when they lost after the Minnesota game. But
Sure.
It's just me.
Yeah.
All right. One last thing before I let you go. What do you think about Tom Allen being National Coach of the Year?
I think that's a great decision. I think he's phenomenal. Yeah, that would be my selection off the top of my head.
Because I know you was mentioning Matt Campbell also.
Yeah, Campbell and Chadwell, and Napier's been really good with Louisiana. Who else? Yeah, it would be those four. But I would go with Tom Allen. He would be my selection.
One last thing before I let you go. You got Tom Allen, you got Matt Campbell, and you got Jamie. His last name is Coastal Carolina. I can't remember his last name. Jamie.
Chadwell.
Chadwell. By the time of the start of either the 2023 season or 2024 season, which one of the three coaches will no longer be at the school right now, you think?
Well,
And they
just
keep
because.
up like they did last year.
Okay, so I don't know necessarily what those coaches' standards are in regards to what circumstance would have to be available for them to take the jump. But it only makes sense that right now Campbell's at the best job in terms of who's the best football team. Campbell's slightly, just slightly over Allen in terms of where their team and their program stands. And then obviously Chadwell, he's at a group of 5 school. So you would think that he would be the most likely to take the jump. For Campbell or Allen to go somewhere, it's going to have to be a darn good job.
Or do you think with both of them being in the good conference, they might just stay?
Well, that would be great. It would be a great story for those 2 programs to be able to hang on to 2 of the top 10 or 15 coaches in America. That would be phenomenal. I don't know. Tom Allen seems to me to be more likely to stay at Indiana than Matt Campbell at Iowa State. Matt Campbell seems to be on a what I'm looking for a catchphrase here that I'm missing, but he seems to be on the fast track toward a big job. Tom Allen seems to be more of I don't know what his background is off the top of my head. In terms of where he's from. Pardon me?
He has been in the SEC before, but I think like as a defensive coach or something.
Yeah, and he was talked about a little bit when South Carolina opened up. I know that Tom Allen was brought up. I don't think by them necessarily, but just people. So he just appears to be more of that person who could stick around a program like Indiana and be satisfied with winning 8 games every year.
Yep, not bad. You do need live shows this weekend. And where is your top 25 that makes sense?
It is out. I posted that the morning after the national championship game.
I haven't seen it yet. That's why I was asking you usually, but I wonder what's been up with notifications lately because I haven't been getting up to. I missed your show the other night and stuff.
Michael, you lead me to a good topic. I have got to do this, but I think I'm going to wait until I take a trip later this month. I need to come up with a standard off-season live streaming schedule so everybody can count on it. But I will be live this weekend. Absolutely. Probably at some point every day. But the next time is going to be tomorrow with Miami Talk at 4 o'clock.
All right.
Eastern.
Sounds good then.
Thanks, Michael.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
All right. Our guy Michael, he's fired up.
The call or 2 to the call will start.
So I'm going to have 2 series of videos coming out concerning the playoff. One is going to be, I'm going to run through what a 18 playoff would have looked like for the past 7 seasons during the playoff era, whether it was my formula of the 5 Power 5 champions, the 2 wild cards, and the G5 team, or just looking at the college football playoff rankings from the committee, what 8 teams would have made it from 2014 through 20. And then also I'm going to unveil my playoff format that includes a scheduling reformat. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Marcus, Dominic. How you doing tonight?
Hey, Dominic. I'm good. What's up?
Oh, not much really. Just got off the line with Uncle Lou.
Okay. Good. How's Lou doing?
Yeah, he's doing good, actually. I just caught off the line with talking to him about Urban Meyer's going to the Jaguars to coach for next season in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm aware.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. So for the off season, I mean, I know Ohio State, they've got a couple of changes to make for their team before the season starts. I mean, I might be wrong about that.
Do they have some changes to make?
No. I said they may have a couple changes to make before next season. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. What kind of changes do Ohio State? What do they need to do?
Well, I was going to say their defense, but I don't think they need to make any changes to that. I might be wrong.
No changes? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I know Ohio State. I mean, gotta give some credit to Ohio State in the national championship game. They tried.
Well, I hope they tried. I think all the teams out there typically try. I've never questioned that, really.
Oh. Okay. Well, I'm actually going to head off to bed now. You have a good night, Mark.
Thanks, Dominic. All right. It's a good thing that we established that the teams are trying in the championship game. All right. All right, folks, anything else in here? I don't see anything else that we need to take a shot at. I am going to get to work. So thank you so much, Mr. TW. Thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. We will have to certainly analyze our situation here and look forward to announcing a live stream schedule for the off season. So we need sponsors to do that, and we will need individual contributions. So thanks everybody for jumping on. Hit the like button on your way out, and we will see you soon.